As we wait for Donald Trump, joining us now, syndicated columnist Dr. Charles Krauthammer. Charles, your thoughts on the evening?
Well, I've never been Trump's warm-up, so I'll try to rise to that occasion. It usually is Christie does that these days. I'll try to take his place. Look, I think it's clear several of the novels have now been written. On the Democratic side, it's really over. There is really no way that it's conceivable that Hillary is going to lose this in the normal way by delegates. It's either an act of God or an act of the FBI head that would take it away from her. In the absence of those, it's an interesting story. It's going to have effects in the future. Sanders is going to leave a legacy, but it's over as a matter of who's going to be the nominee. On the other side, it's equally obvious. It's either going to be a Trump or a Cruz. The likelihood is that there's not going to be, it's not going to be decided before the convention unless there is a deal made behind the scenes. Kasich, I think, survives as a possible kingmaker. Rubio retains his delegates, possibly when the numbers they have could be the decisive difference in deciding whether Trump or Cruz is the nominee. It will be one of those two. It's inconceivable that it would be anybody else. So I think a lot has been clarified. And one other thing is Rubio is going to have a place in the future of the party. Obviously, it wasn't his year. Kasich, I think, is going to have a place in this year as well, but he's not going to be the nominee. So a lot has been clarified tonight.
Charles, there is a question as to whether it is still possible for Trump to win this outright. I mean, if you look at the numbers we've seen so far, Donald Trump does not appear, it does not appear that he will exceed 50% in any state tonight. He's only exceeded, I think, 45%, it was just reported, in 4 states. And according to the math we did earlier, he would have to get about 60% of the vote from this point forward to win this thing outright. Having said all that, the numbers are far worse for Ted Cruz.
That is true. And I think if Trump comes within, 100 delegates of the majority, it'll be given to him as a matter of course. It's like a 3-foot putt. You give it to him, you don't ask about it. But if it's anything larger than that, even if he comes out ahead of Cruz, which I think is quite likely, I think there will be a legitimate argument to be made that if you get a coalition, let's say he takes on a Kasich as his running mate, he gets his delegates, he goes over the top, or a Rubio, I think that's a legitimate, that's not stealing a nomination, that's going by the rules. You need a majority. Trump said it's an arbitrary number. It's not. It's known as a majority, 50% plus 1. Possible that Trump will get it. As you say, unlikely. He'd have to really run the table from now on in some states. And the one thing that I think might cheer a Cruz is that Trump continues the pattern in all of these states of winning among those who've decided early, but being defeated just about every state tonight except Florida among the late deciders, which indicates that there are people out there still wavering, and they tend not to come into his camp.
Charles, if it's a big tournament, those 3-foot putts are not gimmies. But let me just say this. There are 22 contests remaining. 14 of them are closed primaries.
Right.
Obviously, Donald Trump did very well in a closed primary in Florida tonight. But as you look out west, you look at places like Utah, where Senator Mike Lee has endorsed Ted Cruz. You look at other places that perhaps line up for the conservative wing of the Republican Party. Could he make a run?
Absolutely can make a run. It will be interesting to hear his speech here tonight. Look, it's between Cruz and Trump. And I think ideologically it's rather a clear division. It was a muddled race, 17 candidates, all the way up until now. Cruz is a true blue conservative. Some would say too conservative, and that might hurt him in a general election. But nonetheless, he's a constitutionalist. He knows his policies, well practiced. It's all open. He's not hiding anything. Trump is a populist and an idiosyncratic one. Until recently, he wasn't a Republican. It's hard to say even now if he is in any traditional sense a conservative. So the Republican Party is going to be decided whether it wants to continue to be the conservative party or whether it's going to take a chance with populism. It's got a clear choice. It's almost a one-on-one. You got Kasich in there, who complicates it to some extent, although you could argue he's a different kind of conservative. And that's going to be the decision of the party. It's not at all just pure personality. It's not at all just insults and ad hominems. It's about ideas, and they're going to decide it.